Welcome back once again to Galaxy Grudge Match.
Thanks everyone for all the comments. It seems we've got a lot of comments to go over.
The first one seems to be from Galaxy Video's very own Maxx. He's eligible since he wasn't actually a debater in the first part of this episode. It's actually a pretty long one, so let's just get right to it.
Both sides put up a good argument here, I believe, but if I'm to side with one Ash, I'll shop smart and bet on Williams. First of all, I don't think this was mentioned before, but in the movie, Mew is fighting Mewtwo, so I'm not sure if Ash will get the chance to get himself killed. After all, Mew protected Ketchum after he got launched by Mewtwo. Mew would likely protect Williams as well. Even if he interrupts the fight and gets turned into stone, I believe the Pokémon will cry at his sight. Yes, these Pokémon don't know Williams, but there's no way the Pokémon would hate him or attack him. Ash Williams may be a tough cookie, but when push comes to shove, he's very heroic and he truly cares about people's lives. He'd especially care about Brock and Misty, since they're pretty young and they could possibly die in all of this. Ash's heroic instinct would kick in, and he'd try his best to protect them. He may even bond with them a bit. I could certainly see him bonding with Brock over their shared lust for women. I mean, in the comics Ash bonds with the old wise man in like a day, and they become great pals. Even in Evil Dead Regeneration, when he met Sam, an annoying half-deadite who bugged him a lot, by the end of their adventure which didn't even last one day, Ash and Sam became best friends.
There's another part of this comment, but let's get to these first points to keep things well-paced. Yes, Mew is still here, which is a factor I'm surprised neither of us or any of the other commenters brought up.
Fair enough. On the point of the Pokemon crying for Ash, they cried because Pikachu started crying, who had specifically emotionally bonded with Ash Ketchum. No such thing here.
So if someone willingly sacrifices themselves to make a point, that's still not enough? Never mind that in both cases, for most of the Pokemon, both Ashes were basically strangers anyways. I don't think in almost the exact same circumstance the Pokemon would suddenly become assholes. In fact, that would kind of make your side look bad, wouldn't you think?
I guess so, but it's questionable to me if Ash Williams would even get to that point. I still think he'd be immediately suspicious, waving around a gun and a chainsaw, and would not get the help, and be gotten rid of by Mewtwo much sooner than that.
Did you not notice that Williams manages to make friends very quickly in the examples above? Not just those, but rather frequently when he travels all across the country to varying locations in Ash vs. Evil Dead. Never mind the original examples of adaptability. You know, going from a store clerk to a zombie killer and a medieval warrior.
Let's move on to the point Max started to say at the end of this part, how he thinks Ash Ketchum fares in the other world.
Meanwhile, Ketchum is going to have a pretty hard time in the brutal Evil Dead universe. Even though Army of Darkness is the goofiest in the trilogy, it's still got people being killed in brutal ways, including a scene with a blood geyser being shot into the sky. Ketchum rarely has to witness death in the Pokémon world, and even when he does witness it, it isn't as brutal as it is here, and Ketchum gets really sad afterwards. Once Ketchum comes to grips with the horrific world he's stuck in, I don't think I can count on him to be of much use. In fact, I doubt he'd even be able to talk the medieval soldiers into fighting it out like Ash did. Remember, at that point everyone wanted to run away, and it took Williams to convince them to fight it out and get Henry the Red to fight with them. Even if Ketchum makes it to the fight, and he's catching Deadites for fights, there are hundreds of Deadites fighting him at once. This isn't a turn-based fight, where Ash can plan his attacks, and I doubt Ketchum will be able to catch enough Deadites to make a difference, before he gets taken down by a horde of Deadites. Ketchum may be about as strong as Williams thanks to some of his more cartoony feats, but he can be knocked out just as easily as you and me, and as shown in the original Evil Dead films, Deadites can possess you once you're unconscious. Overall, I don't think Ketchum will do as good here when he's out of his element, and in a brutally realistic world, at least compared to the Pokémon world. Meanwhile, Williams actually has done well in worlds that he's a stranger to. In the comics he's often traveling to the universes of different characters, most notably he was sent to the Marvel Universe, and he was able to not only save a lot of Marvel superheroes while he was there, but he escaped. I'm giving this to Ashley J. Williams.
I'll say that Max has forgotten that Ash Ketchum deals with ghost types and other high-powered supernatural beings on a regular basis. I also think Ketchum can inspire enough confidence in the soldiers to keep them fighting, or at least to convince them that it's necessary for their survival. Even a kid like him could see that just laying down and dying would be a bad idea.
But once they actually get to it, I don't see Ash Ketchum making it through. Pokeballs are spotty, since they don't even catch Pokemon all the time, let alone Deadites. And Ketchup's not going to be able to get more once he runs out of them. So even if he collects a lot, that's still not enough to take on the entire rest of the army.
It's not like Ash Williams took on every Deadite all at once. With either Ash, you also have the medieval army backing them up too. I also don't know if the Marvel crossover is a good thing to use considering it's not exactly canon. For the inverse of an Ash Williams and Marvel pairing, let's move on to a pairing of DC and Pokemon, with a comment from Supermune 9001.
I will say Ash, as he is superhuman, and he was able to survive giant explosion head-on. Also, he could lift log that was calculated to be 1,385 pounds. He could also leap into a blimp while it was flying. Also, Ash is creative in battle as he uses Pikachu's iron tail to jump on Draco Meteor, and would think of a plan on the spot. Meanwhile, Mewtwo is at least planet level, and I don't really see Ash Williams surviving against Mewtwo. And also, Mewtwo could just erase Ash Williams' memories, effectively making his prep time pointless.
Already I sense bias. Where's Super Pablo 9001?
That just means he knows what he's talking about. Maybe?
Or that he only knows Pokemon. But what he doesn't seem to know is that there are no Pokemon in this fight!
That doesn't mean that Ash Ketchum can't still be a skilled strategist.
Yes, but turn-based fighting is much different than a direct army battle, like Maxx said earlier. Plus, really, I have to say that saying Ash Ketchum is a skilled strategist and trainer is like saying Gilbert is an incredibly effective wrestler.
That's an exaggeration, and a really dumb comparison. Plus, your guy's made a lot of dumb decisions in the past too.
Yes, but he usually realizes they're dumb, and seems to learn from a lot of them. If you want to talk thinking on the spot, Bruce Campbell said it himself. Ash is a bad slow thinker and a good fast thinker. While this may sound like a slight putdown, it's a common truism for Williams. For a good example, when it seems like everything is fucked against the Demon Ball, Ash manages to think of a plan right then and there that involves him tricking Ball and cutting him up with his own claw. Whereas, again, Ash Ketchum is consistently fooled by Team Rocket. This puts him on the ranks of Elmer Fudd and whatever fake monster is chasing Scooby-Doo and Shaggy this episode in terms of average, everyday thinking, which is not a good sign.
Why are you using plot-induced stupidity arguments again? You didn't seem to have much of a problem with the cartoony dumb logic in your first episode, which you lost. Even if Ash Ketchum has his comedic dumb moments, there are many other examples of his tactical skills, such as when he invents new techniques on the fly for Pikachu, having to deal with uncharted territory, or the many times in battle he's deduced the weaknesses of Pokemon he's just met and beaten them.
Even if he's a brilliant Pokemon tactician, which again is extremely suspect, given that he doesn't generally win Pokemon leagues, constantly uses the wrong types of Pokemon against stronger types, gets rid of Pokemon that work for him in favor of just using newer ones, in addition to constantly forgetting things just so that he has to learn them all over again, almost like they're trying to continuously market the series or something, all while still claiming he's going to be the ultimate Pokemon master, which is like Charlie Brown swearing he'll kick the football this time, only a lot less endearing. Speaking of football, this is, at best, like say John Madden would make a good military general on the front lines in his advanced age, rather than coaching an organized game from behind the sidelines. But I at least assume John Madden wouldn't be directly called stupid by a computer. I feel like the problem with Ash Ketchum is that his story seems to be about forward success and moving on to greater things, but they keep writing it to where he has the memory and tactical skills of a goldfish.
Ducko, you're being rather insulting and dismissive, not to mention long-winded. I'm trying to at least give Williams somewhat of a fair shake here.
Which is more than I can say for these biased-ass commenters.
I thought rule 1 of YouTube for Dummies was don't directly insult your audience.
Okay, fine. Maybe that's why I'm in this crabby mood. Let's go on to something positive. Like, the positives for Ash Williams' own physicality. If you want to talk about lifting, Cosmoium, or however you pronounce that, from earlier, was actually not really depicted as that heavy. And the anime doesn't seem to always use the game's Pokédex data. Not to mention that old Nebby Boy was shrunk at the time, further putting this heavy lifting feat into question. I'll concede that lifting the log is impressive, but Ash Williams very often has to deal with having a chainsaw for a hand in his regular life, has taken on foes who casually split trees in half, has himself casually split living trees in half, harms building-sized deadites directly, and if you want to include crossovers, managed to whoop Spider-Man's ass a bit. While looking at Ash Ketchum's direct physical feats, a lot of them seem to more consistently amount to wall level, or as hyped physically as he's getting these days. Whereas Ash Williams has more than a few building level feats, and I don't need to tell you that a wall alone is smaller than a building. No, I'm not done. Ash Williams has also dealt with large explosions, plane crashes, and buildings being destroyed while he was in there, including a hospital, the infamous cabin, and a giant tower, in addition to the forces of dimensional rift sucking him in. Not to mention that Ash Williams survives constant stabbing, cuts right down to the muscle, and blows to the head strong enough to break metal, which is not too bad for someone who's ostensibly an average supermarket worker. I could also bring up that Ash Ketchum was once knocked unconscious by Gary Oak opening a door, and another time, couldn't lift another log. Point being is that Ash Ketchum isn't really consistent, and not quite in the Toon Force way. Also, what is it with this match also having the connection of lumber?
You're still going on about gag stuff? Not to mention that you bring up non-canon crossover stuff like fighting Spider-Man. Are you gonna also say that the Nesquik Rabbit scales to Superman? That the Wii Fit trainer is as strong as Joker? That childhood is when you idolize Batman, and adulthood is when you realize Joker is the one that makes more sense? Okay, maybe not that last one.
In the anime, no, Mewtwo is not planet level. The storm didn't affect the whole world, just a part of it. Never mind that the goal is not to Mike Tyson's Punch-Out Mewtwo, it's to basically be successful in saving the world. Also, if Mewtwo can just naturally jump to wiping out people's memories, why didn't he do that to the other Ash, numbnuts? Well, he sort of did, but that was basically after he realized that what he was doing was wrong, and he wanted to cover his tracks, and make everyone in the movie forget the forced lesson that makes no sense. Which is admittedly kind of doing them a favor, but not in teaching them right or wrong necessarily. But no, Mewtwo doesn't seem like he does this when he actually wants to compete. Otherwise, he could have just wiped everyone's minds, robbed the blind, and went on his merry way, destroying humanity unopposed. Perhaps these things don't always work like versus debates with bloodlust turned on.
Are we still going with this comment? This is like those 20-hour videos about the new Star Wars movies, but even worse. But I will say one thing for you. You're right that this is not a straight-up versus debate. Which is why I'm also trying to make arguments that Ash Ketchum will be able to rally his unfamiliar new citizenry better than Ash Williams.
Granted, physicality could help, but in both cases, they saw their plans through with negotiation. Ash Ketchum's first impression with medieval folks will again be as a kid, talking about random pocket monsters, which could potentially lead them into thinking he's one of them. Not to mention that, "This is my Pokeball!" will not make as strong of an impression. Ash Williams, on the other hand, has shown to be willing to work with others and ask for information in desperate times, in addition to being willing to throw his life on the line directly. So is Ash Ketchum, but in his current situation, I feel like that might not be the best tactic.
Actually, I would think this match would be extremely close. Have these two bloodlusted against each other, and you would truly have the match far closer from what would seem to be to me.
Bloodlusted against each other? Huh? This isn't them directly fighting each other, dude.
This doesn't really help either of us. Let's move on.
Well, this is a tough-ass matchup. However, I would side with Ketchum. See, Psychic type has the advantage over fighting, so even if Williams could blow off the heads of everyone in his way, he is still at a disadvantage against Mewtwo.
Ash Williams is a fighting type Pokemon? I guess you've been taking notes from the Blanca vs. Pikachu death battle. Ironic, considering you're arguing for the Pokemon.
That aside, he does have a good point if Ash Williams does resort to physical violence in using his weapons. He won't be able to do much against Mewtwo.
Neither would Ash Ketchum, but he succeeded anyways.
And he'll succeed here, I'll say.
Well, this guy doesn't do a lot to support you. There are no comments here about Ash Ketchum himself. At least others had that going for him. Let's move on to some Discord comments. First from Shin the Shiny Pikachu.
Ash Ketchum? If it's Ketchum versus Williams, then Ash should shit stomp. He's consistently tanked attacks from Pokemon like Pikachu and Monferno, and he has even harmed comparable ones himself, like Drapion and Beedrill.
This is from when he thought it was just a physical fight. I'd argue that Ash Ketchum's durability is inconsistent. Sometimes he can't even lift his infamous logs, and he gets KO'd by Gary Oak hitting him with a door. So unless you think Gary Oak's door attack is stronger than those Pokemon...
Again, that's a gag and plot-induced stupidity. But you're still right that this is not a 1v1 fight.
I'm going with Ketchum still, for reasons stated above. Plus his tenacity, determination, and go-get-em attitude make him a fearless leader, which, in Evil Dead, is something you really need. Top that off with some crazy superhuman attributes and Ketchum should tank it easily.
I'd argue that Ash Ketchum's thinking so highly of himself is a detriment rather than a help. It would be like Michael Jordan thinking he was the best baseball player of all time. Not to mention that there's something I haven't seen mentioned a lot. Evil Ash. Only this time, this is an exact physical duplicate of the oh-so-physically hyped Ash Ketchum, but way more ruthless and violent.
Well, he did fight Richie and his Pikachu, so you could say he's gone up against duplicates of his sort before. Not to mention Ditto? Yeah, Ditto, sure.
Even without Pokemon, Ash has gotten through tough situations. I mean, he's even broken out of being possessed before.
This is one of the only factors I've seen that's super relevant. I've looked these up. Brandon, no, not that Brandon, and his friends had to help Ash snap out of being possessed by an ancient king, and Ash had to tell Pikachu to shock him out of it. Note who is very clearly absent here. Ash Ketchum can briefly regain consciousness from this, but it takes an external force to fully drive another spirit out. The other ghostly adventure I can think of for Ash involved a few ghost-type Pokemon taking him and Pikachu out of their bodies after a chandelier falls on them, then putting them back in later. Doesn't speak much to any particular resistance. If one ghost is a problem, and 3 of them is a bigger problem, imagine basically hundreds, if not thousands, of demonic spirits descending upon Ash Ketchum.
That's fair. Though the situations themselves aren't one-to-one either.
Doesn't Ash possess durability that can survive Charizard Heat, Pikachu Thunder, Tyranitar's Power, Machomp's Strength, and so much more? Ash also has more strength on his side, being able to lift Cosmoem with ease, and able to yeet massive logs effortlessly. Meanwhile, in the world of Pokemon, Williams hasn't went up against those kind of creatures, and Mewtwo can one-shot him, so I do believe Ash Ketchum wins.
Durability has been discussed constantly, as has the logs. Williams has gone up against some pretty big-ass demonic creatures before, as well as ones who screw with your mind. But besides that, again, Mewtwo could one-shot either Ash, and in fact, did so, but they got over it. So does that really matter?
Ash's superior durability, power, and his years of being a Pokemon trainer can help him survive. Williams is facing mountain planetary creatures. He's never faced those before.
I argue against Mewtwo being planetary before, at least in this version. Durability and strength, arguable again. I once again scoff at Ash Ketchum's Pokemon training experience being a huge benefit. I'm running out of comparisons for this. It's like claiming the experience of the Washington Generals against the Harlem Globetrotters makes them masters of basketball. And I had to take that one out earlier and move it here. And again, Williams has dealt with apocalyptic, even worldwide events before. This is basically similar, and the tack for either would not to be go about it unprepared and kicking it head on.
He has Deadites, or whatever they are called, so new strats.
Okay, uniting the humans and the Deadites. It's like saying you can unite the forces of the Gazelles and the Lions. Again, the Deadites are about as interested in a peaceful alliance and negotiation as I am in Brandon's Ebony Maw and Doug Walker jokes. Also, whatever they are called, way to give up your game early. Anyways, the medieval people aren't much better. They will burn Ash Ketchum at the stake for even trying to get them to ally with demons. The only time I remember a demon siding with humans in the world of Evil Dead was Ruby. That was only after her own demons turned on her. And she died. Twice. Not to mention that even Pikachu attacks Ash Ketchum when we first met him. And then they had to bond over getting attacked by a bunch of birds. Imagine what'll happen if he has no Pikachu and a swarm of foes constantly coming at him. Not a pretty sight. Even if you think Ash Ketchum can beat one Deadite, it can work like piranhas. One could probably beat the shit out of one piranha, but a lot of them descending upon you is a bad end. That's just how the undead work in this case.
Still, even if you think they can't be turned towards good, Pokeballs would be good at capturing and disposing of these creatures. Give Ash Ketchum credit where credit is due. He'll be able to figure out something like that.
I say Ketchum. Williams will have trouble in Pokemon World. Just imagine how scared Misty and Brock will be from seeing a man covered in blood with a chainsaw, making them suspicious and likely challenge him to a battle to find out what happened to their friend, along with Williams' lack of knowledge of Pokemon. There are many Pokemon who will demolish him, like Mewtwo, Ho-Oh, Hoopa, and etc.
I feel like once Ash Williams realizes they're talking about Ash Ketchum, even he, as comically inept as he is, will be able to clear things up. His story for a lot of things isn't too far-fetched, so to speak, for their world. They probably saw him come out of a portal too, and will realize that he is someone who got stuck in an unfamiliar place, at the very least, and will realize that it's not worth their time exactly to fight with him about everything else going on. While they'd be fighting this Ash, Mewtwo could pull one over on them, and they'd feel like jackasses. For Ash Williams' lack of knowledge on Pokemon, again, do you think Ash Williams knew a whole lot about the undead demonic hordes while he was just selling hardware? To go into other territories, do you think he was an expert on medieval history, the Marvel Universe, Greek mythology? And yet, he persevered.
There have been many movies where Ash Ketchum's been sent back in time or to different dimensions, and his negotiating skills still got him through. So, he's even had to negotiate with deities.
Also, Mewtwo is the only one of those here. Where the heck are Ho-Ho's and Hoopla coming in? Are all the Pokemon movies and seasons happening at once now? And Mewtwo could, again, demolish Ash Ketchum as well. And he basically did. And yet, Ketchum eventually succeeded. It's a moot point. I'm tired of going over it.
As for Ketchum, Ketchum wouldn't have to struggle. He should be strong enough to overpower the Deadeyes who compared to Pokemon as fodder. Also, Ketchum's strong will and leadership will most likely bring peace. Ketchum has saved the world countless times. The Deadeyes may have strategic, but Ketchum has dealt with the Pokemon who have eons of experience and intellectual like Mewtwo, who's superior to 500 IQ, Alakazam, Indexois, Arceus, Groudon, Tigor. Fuck, I'm bad with names, aren't I? Ash has dodged hits from Hoopa, took Pikachu's Volt Tackle, and damaged a Drapion, along with a brief fight with Lucario. Overall, Ketchum will ultimately end up being the best like no one ever was. Ash Ketchum for the win.
For the Deadites I said before, one individually, he could probably take them down easily. A whole army of them, and possibly eventually much larger ones, or ones with a wider variety of powers, including a few who could induce a world-ending cataclysm. Not to mention an Ash Ketchum created by them that's his physical equal, but more ruthless and probably more competent. Good or bad, he's not the guy with the gun there. Even with the basic ones, well, once again, you can kill one ant or one piranha, but there's something to fear about a whole swarm of them covering your body.
Ash has survived hordes of opponents before, such as Ospiro in the first episodes, and even capturing an entire horde of Tauros, which could be similar to the Deadites in numbers. Granted, he usually has help from Pokemon, but the fact that he can physically survive all these things proves that even a lot of Deadites will have a hard time taking him down.
I've already called Ash Ketchum's technical skills and leadership into question a whole lot, but more specifically, his dealing with Mewtwo involved getting turned into a statue, and the Pokemon crying to get him back up. Well, to put it less like I'm calling it stupid, he made a sacrifice, and that made Mewtwo reconsider his motives. Something Ash Williams is perfectly capable of doing when it comes down to it. If Ash Williams proves his willingness to help others, and shows that behind his bluster, he's willing to help out when the fate of the world is on the line, then he's won it, just as Ash Ketchum did. And to end this on a good note, that's a respectable, heroic quality both share.
Well, thanks for being nice at the end. Almost makes up for you being relentlessly insulting in this episode. Next, there are a few comments that are absolutely not relevant to the match. There's Jimmy Hopkins versus Iona Aishi, and not one, not two, but 3 comments suggesting matchups for Freddy Fazbear. Even though I think Freddy Fazbear is epic, sadly, he is not in this matchup.
How about we just move on to our final verdict? Let's see the poll. Seems like most people voted for Pokemon Ash, which reflects a lot of our comments as well. I have to say that I disagree. Well, you already knew that.
What they didn't know is that I eventually agreed with you disagreeing. It was close, but we can both explain.
We've seen Ash Williams adapt to many different worlds and situations than he was used to before, whereas not so much with Ash Ketchum. Williams can work well with others, and is willing to put himself on the line. He's generally more competent at what he does than Ketchum is at his chosen field, and can rely on himself if a team isn't around.
Oh, I wouldn't quite say it the same way. Ash Ketchum does have skills and competence, but he's also much younger and less experienced overall, even if Ash has been quote-unquote 10 for God knows how long.
I feel like a lack of familiarity with Ash Williams against Ash Ketchum, plus thinking the goal was entirely physical, if not thinking it was just a direct fight between the two, hurt a lot of the arguments for this match. That said, Ash Ketchum has been backed into a corner by another Ash Ketchum. Looking about the same but with darker clothes, redder eyes, and a more evil expression on his face. This seems like the moment where Ash Ketchum is outmatched. Evil Ash is taunting the poor boy about being a little goody two-shoes, until suddenly, a portal opens up, and the distracted evil Ash Ketchum gets shocked, then blasted away with a shotgun. Ash Williams reunites Ash Ketchum with his Pikachu. Then they cleared things up with each other. Williams explains that after Mewtwo reformed, he, Ash Ketchum's friends, and a few scientists worked to restabilize the time stream. After this, both Ashes will go back to their normal times and places. It'll be like none of this happened to most.
But in the back of their minds, neither would forget what had happened, and their experiences along the way. Everything gets sorted out, but somewhere else, in another dimension, a certain triangular being continued to plot chaos among many realms.